and gentlemen, and welcome back to Cone's Garage, Project KADER. I am ready to try some first starts. Well, we're almost ready. We actually have to finish some things first. We need to finish up the fuel system and any problems that come up with that. Go over the engine one more time as far as alignment on everything. We need some fuel, we need oil, we need coolant, and all that kind of fun stuff. But I think this will be the episode that we hear some noise from this car, or we hear lots of disappointment in my voice. Okay, so what we have here is a power probe. And basically what this is you hook this up to the battery source that is hooked up to the car. It's important that it's hooked up to the chassis, otherwise this won't work. But then you can't either send power, or you can test ground on anything. So if I, like, say, put this on the engine, you can hear that we have a solid ground to the engine. And that's true. Should be true just about anywhere on the engine, and including the chassis. Now, under here is a terrible dirty mess, but in the middle there is where the original fuel pump relay would be. The one that looks all burnt, I'm anticipating, is the one for the fuel pump. That fuel pump has burnt up at least 3 times since I've owned the car. Who knows how many times before that, so I'm sure it's seen some trauma. We are no longer using this relay though. I just need this source for how the fuel pump gets power, because that's where I'll be sending power. If we come over here, we should hear, yep, that we have a continuous source there, and there, not there. Okay, that's probably the trigger for this relay right here. We're not going to be doing that. I could do it that way. I could still use this regular relay here and just trigger it from a different source, say the accessory circuit, but we have a nice relay board in there to use, so let's use it. But if we send power to, let's turn the beep off so I can talk. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that, but the relay inside the car is clicking, and that is a secondary relay that is on the ignition. This one also. Oh, there it goes. Alright, I'll let it go for a second here and build up a little pressure. Alright, well, it wasn't long enough to build up any pressure, but we do at least know that is the source of the power. As it would turn out, the reason it didn't build up any pressure is because there was a nice hole in the feed line from the tank to the hard line. So what better time than now to go through and replace those lines, all the rubber lines that are in the pressure side of the system. And that's just what I did here. And I managed to not splash fuel in my face when I did this, which is a first. Holy crap, the spiders under there. Pretty sure they have taken over this car in the past 2 years. With the new fuel hose attached, I took this opportunity to purge the tank of any fuel that was in there. It's the wrong octane anyway, and it's been sitting for 2 years. No good for anybody, really. So with that done, it is time to try and plug up the computer for the first time ever. And this is a nerve-wracking process because if I've got, wires backwards somewhere along the line or power feeding to the wrong place, we can let the magic blue smoke out of this ECU in a hurry. We got laptop out. To my surprise, everything went smoothly, first time around here. And I'd messed around with the program a little bit, but without the ECU plugged up, it's very difficult to know what you're going to get into. It goes through some of the settings and which way you would want it to be set up. However, this ECU already has a tune on it, so I just created a new project and imported all the settings from the ECU. You can do customization with the gauges and stuff, but not getting into that just yet. As you can see, I'm very nervously hitting accept to all this stuff. But there we have it. It sees the computer, and you can tell the one that's red is the air-fuel ratio, so it's saying, whoa, there's nothing but oxygen here, so that's why it's red. But that does mean that it is indeed working, but I take this opportunity to go ahead and back up this tune off of the ECU, save it to the laptop, just in case anywhere down the road something either happens to the ECU, something happens and I overwrite a tune. I have a backup somewhere for it, and I'll probably put this in a few places. But I'm hitting the throttle, and it sees that signal, so everything looks like we are going to be in business there. So it's pretty much time to get this thing ready to run, which means oil change, putting coolant in it, and all that kind of fun stuff. I run conventional oil, just a high mileage Castrol. I've had nothing but good luck with it so far. Knock on wood, we've never had any kind of like bottom end failure in a KA. So, if it works, you kind of just stick with it. I realize the engine's going to be under a lot more stress now, and I will probably be doing oil changes after maybe every other event or so, just because of the higher load on the engine and the amount of fuel that will likely be getting into the oil due to the fuel ratios we'll be running. Then, as I was doing that, there was one more thing that just kind of caught my eye, and it was this crank trigger position sensor, whatever it is. It reads the teeth on that crank pulley. I noticed it was sitting mighty close. Tried to stick a piece of paper between it. Couldn't even get the piece of paper between the two. So, rather than having that knocked off the first time we tried to turn this thing over, I went ahead and adjusted it back. I'm not sure how close it needs to be to get a good signal. That's something we could probably mess with in the future if we see it not getting crank signal. And then from there, we're going to fill the coolant. It's KA. Please do this. If you own a KA, always open the bleeder and then squeeze the upper radiator hose. Keep adding coolant. It's going to pour coolant all over the place. I don't know. I'm only running like a 40-60 mix because Florida. Alright, so at this point I am unplugging the coil and the ECU, or sorry, not the ECU, but the fuel pump. I'm doing that so we can turn it over and not worry about it starting. That was a successful test. It turned over fine and I didn't see any issues. Okay, so we're going to try a test fire today. I think we are pretty much ready to go. This is not finished by any means, but I think I'm to the point where there's nothing stopping me from doing a test fire just to see what happens. I just put some fuel in it, and obviously we did the oil and everything like that. We'll take a look inside. Alright, so in here, let's see if I can get a decent camera angle on it. In here is where the magic is happening. So here is the wiring that I needed to do, and unfortunately I had virtually no decent reference for this. There was a very pixelated picture from 4 years ago on Facebook, so that's was pretty garbage. Some of them were still labeled, and I'm leaving those labels on there for now. But then I had to run, this is the new fuel pump pickup. This is, I did this one just kind of, something to do. This is a new wire for the fan. I previously just ran that straight from battery. And then this is the accessory circuit. So this picks up, I have it running off of the previous radio accessory. Obviously I'm never going to radio in this car, but this may be something I change. Because I notice now that when I turn the key to accessory, it fires up the ECU and everything like that. The fuel pump, that could be a nuisance in the future. And I believe it's going to be the case that when I turn the car off, it's not going to turn off until I bring it all the way to off. So it'll still run an accessory. Not sure how I feel about that. But here we've got power, ground. This is the grounding area, so this is all grounds. Fuses for all of these relays. It's a really nice setup. He did a good job with that. Then down at the bottom, we got the computer, and the computer is plugged in. I don't have the vacuum line hooked up yet, so I need to do that. And then I guess we'll bring out the laptop and plug it in and see how everything looks. But pretty much we're not going to know anything from that until she runs. One more random little thing to do is to try and set some base fuel pressure on it. It's hard to tell until it's running because the fuel pump doesn't just stay on with this setup. It only turns on in like builds pressure. But getting it close shouldn't be too hard, and it's pretty easy to adjust, so that'll be good for the future. Now I'm gonna plug up the ECU one more time, and for at least the first while, will probably always have the computer on when I'm doing any kind of testing or running, just to make sure that everything is looking normal. There's a lot of different parts of this that could have gotten bad over time, so sensors going bad or injectors that are locked up, lots of different things that could be wrong. Let's go over some chances, shall we? I'm going to go with 50% chance that nothing happens when it turns over. It just turns over, there's no trying to start, there's no misfires, nothing. I'll give a 20% chance that it does try to start, but doesn't, so it misfires and flutters around because something isn't calibrated right. Say another 20% chance that it starts but then immediately stalls because it's not calibrated right. We'll give a 5% chance that it starts and runs and idles fine, and a 5% chance that something random catastrophic happens. I don't know which one that falls under. It didn't do much, it didn't do anything, and then one massive backfire. Obvious problem there. The circuit that I chose to be the one to turn on the relay board, which turns on the computer, which turns on all that stuff, is great. It turns on the accessory circuit and everything, but it also turns off when you go to the start sequence. So now I'm currently trying to find a different circuit that is on an accessory, or sorry, I'm really trying to find one that's on and on in start. Thinking I can do that in here, hopefully somewhere in that mess of wires. Thinking my likely culprit is, or not culprit, but like the likely chosen one will be this one. That should be the power for on. Should always be on. We'll see. Alright, so key is in. Let's see who has power here. You have no power. You have no power. You have power with the key off. And you don't. You are probably the ground there. Okay, so let's go to accessory. Just gonna turn everything on. Just fine. No power. No power. And no power. Interesting. About the on position. Black and white turns on in this position. What I need to see is if it stays on in start. It does. Okay. So that is our wire. It is the black and white one. This one right here. I don't know if you can see that. Should be an easy fix. Alright, so it started. I can't believe it. It was obviously trying to figure some stuff out, and it immediately drained itself of all fuel pressure. But I think that's a quick fix. Looks like the female blade that I got to go into the relay thing under there, it fell out during the shaking and everything, so I'm going to put a sludge of solder on that and see if it'll stay. So you may have noticed during that first little bit of running that it sounded atrocious. That's to be expected. Timing chain car, it needs oil pressure for it to not make that terrible noise, and it takes a while for the hydraulics and stuff in the timing chain to work. Not really anything I'm terribly worried about, and it should go away. I would say the alternator too. The bearing in the alternator may be seized up from sitting so long, or one of the pulleys. Something's certainly making a racket. Alright, so we have a running car at the moment. It is not completely done. Before we call this a success and an episode though, I want to put some new spark plugs into there. Got one step colder of a range of spark plug than stock. That is the KA24DER, something like that. Always use MGKs on a Nissan. There we go. And we'll put those in there, and we're going to gap them down. A stock gap is, I think, 0.35. We're going to bring that down to a 0.28, and that's to compensate for the boost when we actually make some, and we'll keep it from blowing out to the spark. The colder range is to help with pre-detonation. Both issues that this setup has previously had, and we will be dealing with a lot in the coming episodes of this, as we're going to start to do things like water injection, possibly method injection, probably just water injection for now, just to try and get the intake temperatures down, but we'll get to that later. Let's see if we can get the spark plugs in, and I would like to get the hood on and get it out of the garage today. That would be nice. Alright, hopefully this is recently in frame. There's a stock gap on them. I don't know what they're set to. Tighter than 3.5. Tighter than 3.4. About 30. And we want to bring them down to 25 is what Grant said he was running, so that's what we will do. So we want to bend that guy over and down to make it down to 25. So this plug, if you're ever looking for a plug that is super rich, that's what a rich plug looks like. I know why that is. It hasn't run enough yet, A, to really get the tune set, and B, when I first got it turning over, I was doing nothing but dumping fuel and not getting a spark, so that would be the reason for that. It's a good thing I did too, because these are gapped up at about 40, which is actually a little high even for a normal KA. So another thing I'm going to do, and this is probably completely unnecessary, but it's just something I learned about and thought it was at least a solid concept, is that I'm going to index the plugs, and that means that the shield here, the negative side of the electrode, I'm going to put to the exhaust side. So I want it to be facing like this. So when I put it on this, which has a little rubber ground in there so it'll stay, I'll put a mark right here so that I know where to tighten it to have it spaced like that. They actually sell little washers you can put on the threads to get it indexed correctly and tighten down perfectly. But honestly, if it's a little bit this way or a little bit that way, I'm not too concerned, as long as it's not this way. Almost perfect, actually. I'm going to have to tighten it a little bit past, but that's almost ideal. So there you go, there you see the red mark is facing us. This is the intake side, so the flame front and everything should be perfectly aligned. So this guy is a bit too snug to get it perfect. At this point, I really just want to see this car looking like an actual car, so I'm going to put the hood on it. Yes, that's right, I'm a 240SX owner that likes to have all of my body panels attached. Don't judge me. Also, one of the best parts of being an introvert is that you learn to do things by yourself really, really well. And one of those things is installing the hood on a 240SX. Don't steal my method here. It's mine. As strange as it sounds, putting the hood on was like the moment that it hit me that we're like this far into this. Like we actually made it this far to put the hood on. I honestly thought for a long time I would never get back to this point. Alright, let's see if it will start again today. Hopefully nothing has changed. I don't think anything has. It's still going to be real weird, and I'm sure the alternator is going to make a racket. I cleaned out the alternator it was full of oil before, and I'm sure the bearings are not good in it, so we might need to replace that. We'll see. Maybe it'll shut up over time. There's the computer screen. One injector that's not wanting to wake up every time. See how stumbly it is? It's missing on one cylinder. Look how low the AFRs are. That's super rich. Super rich. I can hear it spewing fuel. I can smell it spewing fuel. Yeah, we're still one cylinder down, I think. You're gonna hear it popping through. Alright, let me open the hood, make sure that I got 4 spark plugs on. I checked the order. I might just have an injector that needs a little tap. They get solid after a while, they get seized up. Well, I smell fuel and it's running rich, so we may have an ignition issue there then. Yeah, we may have a cylinder that's not getting spark. Thinking we got an injector stuck open. Fuel pressure is draining as soon as I turn the key off. It wouldn't return that quickly, so likely culprit. Alright, now we got 4 firing. Little tap to each one. Say new set of injectors is the first thing we need to purchase. AFRs are coming up already. It's still in cold idle. See the green there. I don't know how much of this you can see. So 12 is okay for cold idle. We'd like to see it come up. Otherwise, everything else looks normal now. The idle surge, from my memory, this setup always had a little bit of idle surge. That's something that we'll have to try and deal with in the future. It's not bad. 100 RPM or so isn't bad. Looks like our tach is maybe 200 RPM off, which I think is in line with what it used to be. So we're actually at about from the 950 to the 1050 range. Just dropped ignition advance. All this stuff is really cool, and we'll be looking into it a lot in the future. You guys will probably get sick of this screen eventually. Alright, well, it's running. Let me try and back it out of the garage, and maybe we'll give this thing a bath. as it was sitting here in the driveway, I figured it was a good time to go ahead and adjust the fuel pressure. So we did that and got it to 45, which is, I think, where I want it for now. Got the AFRs in the correct range for idle, so that all seems good. So I guess it's time to give it a bath, get the dust and spiders and grossness off of this thing. Oh man, there's so many spiders. It's crazy. But there's still a lot to do here, so definitely we need a new set of injectors. I'll get some bench-tested ones. Seems like a little bit of a waste to spend money on brand new injectors for it because I'm not going to use these 370cc's forever. But a good set of remanufactured ones is like $150, and that seems very much so worth it. So go ahead and do that. It's got a good bit of a smoke to it. It has been sitting for 2 years, so 2 years of sitting will probably make valve seals and things like that not very happy. But we've also got the PCV system to deal with. So currently there is zero vacuum on the crankcase ventilation. It's going to atmosphere. However, I don't think it has any ventilation with the stock PCV on there. So it's going to have some blow-by at the moment. I personally want to run a catch can setup on it, put vacuum back on the PCV. Grant was not using any vacuum on it. He was just having it go to atmosphere. His always smoked. It always had blow-by. I think that's the reason for it, personally. That's something, we'll look into in the future. There's so much now that it's running, there's so much fine-tuning and so many different things we can try with it. I'm really excited for this part of the project. The tuning, the fine-tuning. There's so much more to do. We got gauges to hook up. I got a coolant temperature gauge. It's really cool to hook up. I got a knock light. He gave me a knock light that is not wired and has a mess of a wiring harness that I want to try and hook up. That's something that I think is really neat and would give me some peace of mind. But for now, I'm still super excited. It ran, it runs, it moved on its own power, it got out of the garage. Got to figure out some things before we can actually drive it. But yeah, I'm pretty ecstatic just to get this far. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you to all the patrons that have helped the financial burden of this project. Thanks to the guys from Automation. They gave me the first boost to even make this project a reality. And just thanks to everybody for watching and tuning in, keeping me inspired to keep doing this. There's a lot more to do in the future, and I hope you're excited for it. But for now, we'll call this one done. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.